Oh, man, UFC 314 was last night, and dude, what a card we had. That was honestly one of like the better pay-per-views we've had in a minute. I mean, we got a lot of fights to talk about here. Usually we keep it to the main card for the pay-per-views, but this time we have a bunch of prelims that we want to talk about too. So strap on in because we're going to be in it for the long haul. And I say we hop right into this main event because we have so many fights to talk about, and this main event was such a thriller. We had Alexander Volkanovski fighting Diego Lopes for the vacant featherweight title since Ilia Topuria vacated a couple of months ago. And Volkanovski makes history, becomes two-time featherweight champion, and becomes the first UFC fighter under 170 pounds to win a title fight over age 35. One of the all-time greats, Alexander Volkanovski, gets the win here. And man, I mean, this was such a fun fight. Let's get into it. I mean, what did you think of this one, man?
It was fireworks, dude. What more can you really say besides that without getting into a super technical kind of conversation? Because let's be honest, this fight, there wasn't other than Volk kind of circling and picking his spots and being a lot more timely with his strikes, and Diego Lopes not being so much protective of himself and kind of trying to walk Volk down, but Volk was not having any of it. So that's one of those fights where it's kind of who's gonna land more and not who's gonna land harder, because Diego Lopes most definitely landed harder than Volk, and that's what swayed me to thinking, dude.
Are we gonna hop right into this? Are we gonna hop into this? I'm down to. We should.
Yes, we have to. We absolutely have to.
All right, tell people what you texted me after the fourth round of Volkanovski versus
After
Lopes.
the fourth round, I said Volk needs the finish.
And then I responded.
Volk, not Diego Lopes.
Right, yeah. Just to be clear, he said that Volkanovski needed the finish. And then I texted Tiz back. I said to him, what? Are we watching the same fight? And then you told me that some of your training partners looked at you the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, man, we can't always get them all right, you know? We make mistakes in this game.
You know what? Fair enough, fair. But I'm glad there was at least one judge to say 48-47.
Yeah.
Because I really... Fine, it was Diego Lopes' first title fight. The fight IQ was not quite there, obviously. He kept his chin tucked well in the beginning, but would just keep allowing himself to walk into Volk's jab, and it just wasn't doing him any favors like I think he might have thought. And other than that, I just saw him landing harder. I saw him knock down Volk, and I just I felt for a second that Volk was going to have to bring out the big guns.
You were drinking that Diego Lopes Kool-Aid for this one.
I was. And I wasn't before when this fight got initially booked. I just thought, which I initially was right then in terms of Volk's experience and just overall championship pedigree, was going to get his hand raised in this fight. And that's how it went. That's how exactly how it went. So.
Yeah, the way I felt about this fight, and it was interesting too, in the preview that I did, I said that Diego Lopes' aggressiveness is either going to win him this fight or it's going to lose him this fight. And in hindsight, it seems like it lost him the fight because, we talk about his lack of head movement as the fight went on, and especially when you're getting hit with jab after jab after jab, like if you just move your head a little bit, that's an easy way to just slip the jab. But he just wasn't doing that. He was walking forward, kind of not plodding forward, but he really just wasn't moving off the center line, and that's why Volk was able to pick him apart like that from the outside. I thought his striking looked clinical in this fight because, yeah, Diego had his moments, and he did hit him with some big shots. Obviously had that knockdown at the end of round 2. But overall, this fight really was just Volk picking Diego Lopes apart and showing that championship experience, and it was a really great performance and a vintage performance from one of the better champions that we've seen in recent UFC history, and I was super hyped because I think everybody loves Volk, man. And isn't it crazy? Like, remember when, like, especially when you were first getting into the UFC, remember how much people used to hate Volk because of that second Holloway fight? Everybody thought he lost. Everybody's like, this guy, he's cocky, he's like, blah, blah, blah. And then throughout his title reign, just beating all of these legends, he slowly became probably one of the most beloved fighters on the roster. And you really saw that during his walkout, especially. I don't know if you noticed that everybody in the arena was singing Down Under as he was coming out. And I thought that was really cool. So clearly Volk has that star power. Now he's a two-time champion, defies the odds, does it over the age of 35. And, before we get into like what's next for both of these guys, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Volk's legacy because I think we're at a point where you really have to start talking about where Volk stacks up in that all-time great argument. And I'm not saying that Volk is the greatest fighter of all time, but at what point do you have to start asking, is he in the top 10? Is he in the top 8, top 6? Because he's already arguably one of the greatest featherweights of all time, if not the greatest featherweight of all time. I think he is number one personally. And the thing is with him, now he's the champion again, and there's a whole new generation of featherweights that he has the potential to beat and cement his legacy even further. So I don't know, man. Like, when do we start putting Volk into that discussion, like top 10, top 8 all time? Like, do you think he's there yet? Or do you think maybe a couple more fights he'll be there?
No, I feel like,
It's a tough question. That's why I wanted to have the conversation.
No, like, I mean,
it's debatable,
What would your criteria kind of be that places him in there? Because he made history like he did last night?
One aspect of it, because you can't discount somebody doing something for the first time ever.
Or is it because of who he's beaten?
That too. I think it's both. The fact that, for one, even if he wasn't 36 right now and he just became two-time champion, let's say he was 30, I would still say that this is an incredible achievement because you really don't see a lot of repeat champions in the UFC. So for Volk to even do that is pretty impressive, but also the fact that he did it over the age of 35, which is like unheard of under 170 pounds, literally. And then, like you just said, I think all of the people that he's beaten, especially on that first title reign, and even though he lost when he went up to lightweight, he had a great fight with Islam Makhachev in that first one, and Islam's obviously a dominant champion. I know he lost, but again, considering how many people aren't able to do that with Islam Makhachev, I thought that was pretty impressive. But even if you just want to talk about his featherweight legacy, I mean, the dude's beaten everybody in multiple generations, and now we're finally starting to see another generation coming up here at featherweight who Volk might have a chance to beat and then really keep cementing his legacy, because we could honestly get right into that.
He did just beat somebody from
this. Exactly. That's kind of my point too, because Lopes was the clear number one contender. A lot of people were picking against Volk, and you can't even be mad at that because, again, nobody has done what he just did. So you can't exactly say someone's an idiot for picking against him. But now that he beat Diego Lopes and he did just make history, two-time featherweight champion, his first reign was absolutely legendary. You got to at least have the conversation that this guy's in the top 10. Because, when I think of other people who I would maybe put in there, I think of title defenses, the quality of those title defenses, how many times was this person champion, what have they done at different weight classes if they've explored. Obviously what their record is, that does matter. But I think Volk, he's impressive in all of those criteria. So I just think that it's time to start having that conversation, and especially if his title reign this time is even half as good as his last one. We have a lot to talk about with Volkanovski, man. But
so because he did, no matter which way you slay it, he's the new featherweight champion, despite obviously being the champion that he was. So if you had to rank him amongst champions right now, where would that place him? Do you factor in his prior title reign?
That's what I was about to ask you. Like, do you mean like in terms of who's the best champion, like in terms of all time, or you mean like currently, like skill wise?
Currently, right now.
He's up there. I mean, doing that versus Lopes was pretty impressive. I think it's fair to say that he's still not quite what he was in that first title reign, because in that first title reign he was dominant. And he did have moments in this fight that were a little dangerous. But again, to do what he just did in the way that he did it, I think that he's still right up there with the best of the best. I think that Islam Makhachev is probably the best champion right now. And John Jones / Tom Aspinall are up there for me too. Marab is right up there. It's tough, man. We have a lot of great champions nowadays. And I know people hate to say this, but I think Bilal is up there too. I think he's really been impressive. I don't know, man. It's tough. But I'd probably put him in the top 3 or 4 even now, like completely disregarding his past title reign. Because he is all around a pretty damn good fighter. So that's just my take on it. But then, like, you think about what could be next for him, and like I said, trying to expand on that legacy, there's a lot of options for Volk at 145 right now, and I truly think that there's a bunch of people who could get the title shot next. Yair Rodriguez is the first person who comes to mind, just because obviously he beat Pitbull on this card earlier in the night, as we'll get to. Movsar Evloev is another guy you have to throw in there. Lerone Murphy. Those are 3 names right there that I think if Volk beat, and obviously he beat Yair already, but if he can beat Yair again or get a win over Evloev or Lerone Murphy, that'd be pretty impressive and adds a lot to his legacy. I think it could be any of the 3, but right now I still lean on Yair Rodriguez, even though Volk did beat him already. I think that the UFC sees that September card in Mexico and wants to have a big fight on there, and I think Volk versus Yair 2 is a big fight because Volk is such a huge star. And like I said, even though he won this fight, it does seem like he's kind of lost a little bit of a step since his first title reign, so maybe you think that Yair might have a better chance in this one because Yair looked pretty damn good earlier in the night. And like I said the other week with Brandon Moreno, I think that star power matters to the UFC when it comes to booking a title fight when there's a lot of options. And if you put Yair Rodriguez in a title fight with Alexander Volkanovski in Mexico on a pay-per-view, that's an electric event, man. So that's personally what I think they're going to do, but I wouldn't be mad if they went in any of those other directions personally. But what do you think about it? Do you think I'm right or do you think I'm way off?
Well, I mean, how off can you really be when still
McGregor comes back down to 45?
Yeah.
No,
well,
I'm messing around.
No, like, I get that point of thinking because even though this was such an important card for the division, I think you still kind of got that dose of, oh yeah, these guys are who we thought they were. They just had to reassure it in this card, and they did. So you had Yair taking all 3 rounds from someone making their debut out of their prime. You had John Silva, exciting finish, which we've seen over and over, and you saw Alexander Volkanovski 5 rounds of elite crisp striking and just toughness to even get up from that knockdown for one, and weather all the other shots that
I was at round 4 when he got punched pretty much right in the eye, and that was a punch.
If you want to, yeah. And then I know in your preview you mentioned Dan Ige and Sean Woodson. I mean, for Dan Ige, who's coming into this fight closer to a gatekeeper role, for him to come back and get finished, which we'll talk about, obviously, how that finish went, but
still a finish, though.
Still finish in the record book. That's something that could really jump him up as well, as long as everyone else that's, like, Movsar Evloev has been at 4 for, I feel like, a lot of time. Lerone Murphy just got a huge win, and now he's up. You still got Aljo probably going to stay in that top 10.
UFC just signed Aaron Pico as well. That's another guy who could possibly make a run, depending on how he does in this promotion. I mean, featherweight is really fun right now. That's what I'm saying. Like, Volk, he really has the potential to really add to his legacy, which I didn't really think about until afterwards. And then you start to try and do that matchmaking. You're like, wow, there actually is a bunch of people that he could fight. So, and I still think that Diego Lopes is another guy who could come back and have another title fight versus Volkanovski or anybody in the future because he looked a lot better than I thought he was going to look. So, I could see him I could definitely see him improving and coming
Cause
back
all right,
stronger.
here's a question: when you asked if I thought is accurate, you're saying what's next for Volk or way off. The question is how much of a super fight? I mean, super fights. They're talking like his fight with Islam. How much is that really out there anymore? The rest of Volk's career? Like,
No.
I don't think so.
I think it's
No,
featherweight and that's it. I think if he
exactly.
loses the
So
title, that might be it for him. That's why even in the last video that I did, the preview, I was like, this could really be a do or die type of fight because if Volk loses, what's the point? Like you're already a Hall of Famer if you retire today. So if he were to lose this fight versus Lopez, what does he
so I
have to
mean,
gain from
tells
sticking
me
around? But now he won, he's the champion. So now he
yeah.
can talk about
Well,
how he can add to his legacy, which is fun because people love Volk and I think that Volk can be, a top 5 guy by the end of his career depending on how this title reign goes. So that's just my 2 cents on it. And then, like I said, I think Lopez is a guy who has the potential to come back and put himself in another title fight, whether it be against Volk or somebody else in the future. I think that he looked pretty good in this one for a guy who took a loss, obviously, but he had his moments, man, against a guy who has been a dominant champion in the past. So I was impressed by both guys, but especially Volk for, like I said, doing something that's quite literally never been done to this point. So I was super hyped to see him get the win. I think all of the MMA community is pretty hyped to see Volk get the belt back. But let's talk about this co-main event, man, because dude, we have so much to get to on this card. And this co-main, I mean, speaking of incredible performances, Paddy Pimblett truly arriving at 155, finishing Michael Chandler with brutal ground and pound in the second round of the fight. And in my opinion, Paddy Pimblett was dominant in every aspect of MMA in this fight. He looked great on the feet, which I honestly didn't expect that much. I mean, he's not a horrible striker, but against a guy like Chandler, the way Paddy keeps his chin up, I thought that he was going to get cracked a couple of times, even if he did win the fight. But Paddy was picking Chandler apart so easily from the outside. And in the grappling, Chandler had nothing for Paddy in this one. And it was really just probably his most impressive performance so far in the UFC. And now Paddy will probably be in the top 6, top 7 after this fight. And he's cemented himself as a true title contender now at lightweight. And I think you remember this too. Back when Paddy first got into the UFC, I was a little bit skeptical, especially after his first few fights. He didn't look like a world beater. But I have to say, in the past like year and a half, 2 years, he's improved so much in every aspect. And I really do think that he's a true title contender now. And I'm excited to see what's next for him because doing what he just did to Michael Chandler, like I said, dominating in every facet of mixed martial arts, on the feet, on the ground with wrestling and jiu-jitsu, just absolutely fantastic. I was super hyped to watch him do what he just did to Michael Chandler. But man, I mean, give me your thoughts on this one.
well, so I mean, for Michael Chandler to man, for him, I think because there's finally kind of a fight where even though Michael Chandler, I think, had more of a head on his shoulders in terms of not trying to get hit and trying to work his grappling more and more instead of just
Can
sucking it out.
I can I ask you a question? Speaking of that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when Paddy first took his back, were you as surprised as I was that he didn't get up and try and body slam him like he did to Charles? Because I swear to God, when Paddy took his back, I was saying to myself, "This is it. This is when Chandler's gonna head it out, and
That's
he's
what
gonna
I
he's gonna
mean.
do something
It
crazy,"
seemed like
and he didn't. So
yeah, it seemed like he was all business this time around, and it still didn't matter because Paddy Pimblett, I think a lot of people, me included and stuff, pundits, whatever you want to say, we're not gonna give him as much credit with his striking, his hands and his kicks. To be honest, you saw him go for I don't even it was some sort of spinning jump kick he charged at Chandler with, and it just looked majestic. It didn't land, but even Michael Chandler like Michael Chandler looked like bewildered himself. So it was which is unfortunate for Michael Chandler because now it's gotten to a point where, you know, he's like kind of bowing himself out of the top of the rankings like altogether. Like
Yeah, I mean,
it's a
well, Patty was
slippery
number
slope.
12, so it's like now he's going to be out of the top 10 most likely.
Very
And yeah,
slippery slope. And he had Patty's back at times. He had. Well, I mean, even though Patty didn't have his back and he tried to body slam like he did with Charles, like he was able to get Patty down when he had his back, and I don't know,
yeah,
that didn't last too long.
no.
But and then the Patty completely reversed it, got his back, and it
Says a
was
lot
all
about his
Patty.
grappling too, because Chandler, D1 college wrestler, even though he doesn't use it as much as maybe he should, but in this fight, even if he wanted to, it just seemed like it wasn't really going to go anywhere for him. And I mean, Patty just looked absolutely incredible. And this is like I said, this was his best win to date, in my opinion. And now he's in the top 7. He called out Gaethje, Poirier, Oliveira, and then he dissed Arman Saryukian, and then dissed Ilia Topuria after the fight.
Yeah,
So
I care about the Charles Oliveira.
you like that one?
I love that one.
I like it too.
Absolutely.
That's a good stylistic matchup. They're pretty similar fighters, except I think that Patty has more of like a flow type style on the feet, and then Oliveira I think has that pretty traditional like Muay Thai striking style. So I think that could be really interesting. And then on the ground, who knows what happens
Yeah,
there?
that's what I mean. Who knows what happens when it comes to, because on the feet I could see it get pretty stagnant, but I think it's a matter of who's either gonna make the first mistake or who's gonna shoot first, and yeah, I get that. I'm not really so much thinking about who's gonna win from range in that kind of fight. I'm thinking these two are they probably might feel each other out in the beginning, and then the longer the fight goes, the more active the both of them get. In which case, you might see a lot of more you might see a lot more clinching to be had, and probably someone goes down from there. That's how I see it. Because from range, I don't see you probably might you might see Patty a little more urgent and stuff. The hands because Patty is just naturally, and you saw it last night too. The excitement and all that. That's the kind of fighter he is. He
Well,
wants to
Oliveira's
wow.
the exact same way though. This could be one of those like car crash type fights if we get it. I really think any of them would be good. I don't see the Poirier one happening just because if Poirier's serious about this next fight being his last, I truly just don't think he wants to fight an up and comer, and that's his right. He's proven himself time and time again. Gaethje is possible. I think Saryukian is actually more possible than people think, just because, he technically was the number 1 contender and then kind of fumbled his title shot. As remember our conspiracy theory for that? Remember we were saying that he because it was like a back injury or something, so he thought he had some Dave's hot chicken and had a bad night on the toilet. That was a fun time talking about that, but. In all seriousness, I think any of those fights would work out, but I agree with you. Oliveira would be fun.
If Oliveira had Patty in a submission and it got tighter and tighter, I think the ref would legit have to pick up Patty's arm,
Make sure he's not out.
Make sure he's not totally out. It's one of those fights where like Patty could weather a crazy storm. And
yeah, it's definitely possible.
You fight to a decision, Like I don't know. I think that fight would end in a finish between those two, but decision would probably be really close.
Yeah. Hey man, I hope they make it. I agree with you. I think out of all the people who Patty called out, Oliveira is not only the most likely, but I think that it would make the most sense stylistically and in terms of the rankings, because it seems like Ilia Topuria is holding out for a title shot, and I would say that it's more likely than not that he's going to get that shot. So that means you have to figure out what to do with the rest of the top of the lightweight division. And I think Patty versus Oliveira would be a great title eliminator type of fight. So I'm definitely down for it. And then as for Chandler, it's further down in the rankings for him, which stinks for him. And, he's 2-5 now in the UFC, 38 years old. I don't really know what's next for him, but
who knows who's really the next.
Conor
truly
McGregor.
We'll just
You gotta come back and fight somebody.
at 45. Do it at 45.
Oh, Chandler would have to cut his legs off to make 45. Oh man.
That's it for Michael Chandler. I
guess we'll see what he does.
They'll book fights for him and stuff, but probably.
I think it's fair to say his title window is probably closed, barring a miracle.
Which is pretty unfortunate, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that Oliveira fight, and it's just like, man, he was so close. He was so close. But I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, look what Volk just did. So you never know. He could come back and go on a crazy winning streak. But I don't know. I personally don't see it. But what's up, guys? Sorry to interrupt the podcast real quick, but we have a message for you guys.
If you enjoy her Hamburg's content, you want to see more, consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on the videos, all sorts of fight content as much as possible, podcasts, interviews, vlogs. We have it all over here. So thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you, and like he said, please subscribe. And now, back to the show. Let's move on to this next fight, and because we talked a little bit about it during the main event, and I actually do want to get into it a lot more. Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. Yair spoils Pitbull's UFC debut, and Yair once again proves why he's one of the best strikers in the UFC right now. I mean, so creative, so much speed in both his hands and his feet. And he's very precise, too. And I thought that was really what won him this fight. And also just the lack of urgency whatsoever by Pitbull was kind of alarming at first, too. Because in the first few minutes, I don't think he threw more than like one or two strikes. And it's just like, you're not ever going to win a fight doing that, especially against someone who can pick you apart like Yair Rodriguez can. And it just seemed like Pitbull was frozen in there. But he was frozen because of Yair's skills on the feet. And also I think that it's worth noting that Pitbull has fought so many 5-round fights in the past few years in Bellator and the PFL that maybe he just wasn't ready for that 3-round type of pace that you need to have to get a decision. Because he did kind of settle in a bit as the fight went on, but it was a dominant victory for Yair. I mean, it was 30-27 on all three scorecards. So not a good debut for Pitbull at all. Really impressive win from Yair Rodriguez over a guy who really is a Bellator legend and has beaten a lot of really good fighters, including Michael Chandler. So I was impressed by Yair, very underwhelmed by Pitbull personally. So
yeah, that's the whole nine right there, man.
Sucks there's not more. I was really excited for this.
Yair Rodriguez may not be a southpaw, but he has that southpaw stance that I think you knew from the jump was going to give Pitbull problems, especially those kicks of Yair and just his unconventional style of striking anyways. Is just something that now Pitbull comes over to UFC and has to see that. Yeah, I mean, I can't really. Not to say that to give him a pass for being frozen in the beginning, but man, I mean, I kind of understand it, to be honest.
Well, you're facing a guy who is so unpredictable. Like, what can you even expect? You kind of almost have to wait there and see what his game plan is. So I agree with what you're saying, too. I don't know.
I watched some pieces of Pitbull's fight with Sergio Pettis in Bellator, and I think that was a good kind of basis for how Yair would be able to pick apart Pitbull in this fight. And yeah, I mean, I didn't have much expectations for the ground for the grappling, but I mean, Pitbull almost had that armbar, and that was a pretty exciting moment. But
yeah, because Pitbull's he's a really good grappler, but at the same time, really ever since Yair fought Frankie Edgar a long time ago, he's really improved his ground game a lot. And it's not like he's going for takedowns, but his takedown defense is so good. And then also Yair has developed so many weapons off of his back, whether it be to just try and get up with or to actually try and get a submission. Yeah. So I think if this was like the Yair of old, maybe Pitbull would have been able to get a finish on the ground. But I think Yair at this point is really better than he's ever been in his entire career. And this was a really great win for him. And as I kind of mentioned during the main event recap that we had, I personally think that Yair is the top contender right now at 145. And yes, there's Leron Murphy. Yes, there's Movsar Evloev. But star power matters so much to the UFC. And I think that they see that card in September. They're working out the timeline. They are going to Mexico for it. If you put Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez on that card as the main event, that would be electric. And I do think that there's some appetite for it over those other two top contenders. And that's just my take on it. And to kind of use this to transition into the next fight, because I feel like people are going to be like, oh, well, what about John Silva? Well, let's talk about John Silva a little bit, because that was a super impressive win over Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah. You want to talk about the dog? Let's talk about the dog. Let's talk about the fighting nerds.
Yeah, because what a victory for John Silva. He puts Bryce Mitchell to sleep pretty much with a ninja choke. That's what it's being officially billed as. And stood over him barking there. I mean, what a win. And me and you have been praising John Silva since the beginning of his UFC career, which honestly was not that long ago. So it's crazy to see how far he's come in such a short amount of time. But part of that is because he's one of the most exciting up-and-coming contenders in this sport right now. And he really is the real deal, and people are starting to see it. We knew he was elite on the feet already, but now against a guy like Bryce Mitchell, who's such a good grappler, to see John Silva even dominate in that aspect in the way that he did, now we really have seen what John Silva is made of, and now he's getting big finishes over ranked opponents.
He went for the roofie style wheel kick in the beginning.
He did.
I mean, he was trying to. I mean, he essentially kind of did, but he was actually trying to send Bryce Mitchell to this shadow realm.
Well, he did in the end, just in a different way. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows what Bryce was seeing when he was out at that point? I mean, the earth being flat and all that.
Yeah, I don't know. Was the style really that overwhelming for Bryce Mitchell, do you think?
I don't think it's anything really about Bryce's skill level. I just think it's that John Silva is that good. I really think that this dude's going to be another guy who fights for the title soon. I think that, I mean, you know, he just beat where was Bryce ranked for this? I have the rankings up right now. So Bryce is number 13. So now John Silva will be probably around that range. I think that next he should definitely get a top 10 opponent. I mean, it would be fun to see John Silva in a main event, maybe of a fight night, 5 rounds. That could be an interesting next step up for him. But I think that John Silva just
he might be closer than we think at this point.
That's what I'm saying, because his career's already been fast tracked so much, and Bryce Mitchell's a big name. So to get a win like that over Bryce, that definitely helps his star power a lot. And, you know, the build-up for this fight, I mean, everybody was saying this is like the people's main event because everybody was so amped for this. There's so much heat behind it. And John Silva put on an incredible performance. And now it's amazing to see how far he's come in such a short amount of time in the UFC. And I do think he's a dark horse contender for the title. I think if he can get another big win over somebody in the top 10, he's right there.
He's not even a dark horse anymore. You can't get on the bandwagon. If you weren't already on the John Silva and Fighting Nerds bandwagon at the start of the year, like the two of us and many other people, then you can't get on now, to be honest.
Yeah.
They are taking over the MMA world by storm.
It's crazy how much they've done.
And now you got Carlos Prates, who's going to take on Ian Gary. I mean,
great main
another
event.
big fight there for 170, and you
mentioned Rufy before too. I mean,
Rufy got his win. Kyle Barajo is on the way up.
Yeah.
I saw Alexeychuk on the.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. I meant to text you about that. I was like, wait a minute, when did he join the Fighting Nerds? So he looks out of place. There's so many Brazilians, and then you just got this Polish guy. I'm like, all right, that's cool. He sees it. I mean, he had a good win too.
Yeah,
I agree. The only reason why I say he's a dark horse is I just mean it in the sense that like he's not going to be next, but I think that I agree with you. I think that he's a lot closer than people think he is, considering how fast he's already risen. I think he's 1 or 2 big wins away from being right up there. So huge win for John Silva. I know me and you are huge fans of this guy, and I can't wait to see him progress further through the featherweight division, which I think we both think he's going to be able to do. But then to talk about another crazy finish that started off the main card. Oh, yeah, go for it.
One more thing regarding this was John Silva's what featherweight fight?
That's a good question. Let me look because I know wasn't his first fight at lightweight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. By the way, Dana White is going to be best man in his wedding. Apparently, I don't know if you saw that. I'm not kidding with that. I swear to God.
See, this is what I mean, dude. They're taking over inside the octagon and outside the octagon.
I think so. If his first fight was the lightweight one, then yeah, he's won 4 fights now at featherweight against Charles Jourdain, Drew Dober. Not even gonna try and say that guy's name. then Bryce Mitchell, dude.
That's pretty impressive, man.
Bagdasarian. Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother. I mean, good fighter.
Either way, yeah.
Tough name.
Either way, in that short of span of time,
all finishes really too needs to be said.
All finishes.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
This guy's something else, man. I do think he's gonna be a top contender before we even know it. Maybe even champion pretty soon.
Yeah.
So I mean, me and you have high hopes for John Silva. So let's hope we're not dead wrong after this fight. But I don't think we are. But anyway, to move on to the main card opener, Dominic Reyes with an insane knockout over Nikita Krylov. I mean, dude, that left hand outside of Alex Pereira's. I mean, I think Dominic Reyes has a signature left hand as well. What a win, man!
Yeah.
What do you got? You're gonna say something there?
Dominic Reyes did that for me right here. Someone that detracted Dominic Reyes, saying that he, even after a win, that he wouldn't be getting back to the title anytime soon. He does this. He comes back with that. He comes back with this patent. And I mean, it's not like you got Krylov. All right, we got to talk about Krylov here too, because even though this fight was short and sweet, Krylov just kept charging at him with his chin all the way up twice, and then the third time was the charm for Dominic Reyes. I mean, Dominic Reyes all he had to do was counter with the left hand, and he slept him. And I mean,
questionable game plan.
So,
that's for sure.
That was Nikita Krylov just trying to overwhelm Dominic Reyes. And Nikita Krylov has a very good right hand. Don't get it twisted.
He's a good fighter. He's one of those guys but gatekeeper.
When you show that, when you clearly make it clear that that's what you want to hit him with, and you have no regard for your own, defense, then that's how that's gonna go pretty much. Yeah,
it was definitely bizarre. But Dominic Reyes
is back.
Stick with him. Yeah, that was incredible. I mean,
he's back.
Yeah,
that's what I needed.
Dominic Reyes proves tis wrong. I mean, how did it feel to eat your pride last night with that one? Did it suck? Or was it good?
I was happy too.
Yeah, I think everybody is. I mean, Dominic Reyes has been a really good fighter. It was unfortunate to see what happened after the Jones fight, but
eat the crow on this one.
Yeah, I mean, he had 4 straight pretty bad losses, and now he has 3 straight knockout wins. So he's right back on the horse, back into the top 10 now at 205. Another guy I wouldn't mind seeing headline a UFC fight night pretty soon, maybe against another top 10 light heavyweight. But really big win for Dom Reyes, and on a big stage too at the very beginning of the pay-per-view, But let's talk about some of these prelims, man. I mean, there's so many good fights on this card. We could literally sit here all day. Dan Ige.
Well, okay. Pump the brakes when it could. Yes, there were, but we just talked about the whole main card, and every fight was very good. These prelims and this fight we're about to talk about right now. Controversy, and that's the only thing I really think saved this fight. Because
I just wanted to talk about it mostly because I previewed it at the video last week, and I was like, well, I can't just disregard it.
And the controversy makes it even more so. But
yeah, of course.
Sean Woodson, every time I look at Sean Woodson, I think, man, this guy's built like an absolute freak. And it always makes me think, if you want to go pro in MMA, you gotta have some sort of crazy, unique physique like Sean Woodson. And he's one of those guys who you're used to seeing pressure and volume and whatnot. And here in this fight, it was more or less just the jab and the counters that kept him going. And I just think that was very underwhelming to watch. And then Dan Ige, who were accustomed to seeing like just kind of come back in fights and get his hand raised, he does it here again. But then that gets flooded by how fast the stoppage was.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately the main conversation here.
Which sucks too
because this is a big fight for both.
For both guys. I mean, for Ige, you don't want to lose to this guy who's outside of the rankings, and for Sean Woodson, this is the biggest fight of Sean Woodson's career. And like you said, you didn't really have much to offer in terms of power and sitting behind his shots. But I also think part of that is because of how Dan Ige fights. Dan Ige is one of those guys. He's such a good counter striker in the sense that he's so good at catching guys while they're about to throw. He has such good timing. That's what I'm trying to say. He has really good timing. And I think part of that, I think part of it for Sean Woodson was not wanting to get cracked while overextending on a shot. But at the same time, I thought he was losing this fight by the time it was over. And that's why it sucks that it ended the way it did, because I think Dan Ige could have probably won by decision or even finished it maybe like 15 seconds after the stoppage. Because that's the other thing. Joe Rogan said it was the worst stoppage he's ever seen. I don't quite agree with that. It wasn't a good one, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was the worst stoppage I've ever seen. But at the same time, Ige hurt Woodson, but Woodson was on his way to his feet when the fight got stopped, and pretty clearly on the way to his feet. But at the same time, he was pretty badly hurt, and I think that Dan Ige was a couple of big shots away from finishing it. But it just sucks because I think the ref was Mike Beltran for that one, or no? I think it was someone else actually for that one. I don't want to throw Beltran under the bus if it wasn't him. But whoever the referee was, I think he could have given it a little longer, especially too because, like I said, Woodson was getting up for one, but also it was the biggest fight of Woodson's career. I mean, this could have meant a ranking for him if this would have gone to the scorecards, because I think this fight really was damage versus volume, because Dan Ige was landing those huge shots, but Woodson was landing, like you said, some kind of like just hitting him with those jabs
and counters. Like that was really effective.
It was.
But yeah, sure, maybe it was a respect thing for Dan Ige.
That's just my assumption, because Woodson's never really fought like that. Not timid, but, he's a little more aggressive than that in most of his fights. And I think that he just didn't want to get cracked in the way that he ended up getting cracked at the end of it. So it just sucks that the stoppage is the story for this fight, because I thought both guys showed flashes of why they're good. But overall, I mean, kind of an underwhelming fight with controversy that screwed it up in the end. But unless you got something else for this one, I really want to talk about this fight before it, because I think that somehow this fight that was just in the middle of the prelims is probably the biggest fight at strawweight right now, and like in terms of the title picture. And to kind of get into that, Virna Jandiroba defeats Yan Xiaonan, clear unanimous decision, 30-27 across all three judges' scorecards. And I think it's clear as day that Virna Jandiroba is the number one contender right now at strawweight, because Valentina Shevchenko has a title fight booked right now, right, against Manon Fior.
Yeah.
And so that's going to put that super fight idea between Valentina and Zhang, on the shelf for a little bit. I think that Zhang Weili versus Virna Jandiroba is the fight to make right now at strawweight for the title. I think Virna's earned it. She just beat arguably the other top contender right now in just an impressive victory. I mean, just to talk about the fight, Virna's jiu-jitsu is fucking outstanding. Like, that needs to be said. And I think the other thing is, too, not to, compare her style to Islam Makhachev, just to be clear, but in terms of, the physicality on the ground, I think Virna Jandiroba is so strong, along with having such good technique, that it just seemed like Yan Xiaonan didn't have much of an answer for that on the ground. And, obviously Virna almost submitted her multiple times. It was just a really good win, and it's cool to finally see Virna Jandiroba get past that title eliminator, and it just seems like this would be the time now to give her that title shot, because I truly think she's earned it. But that's my take. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, dude, it's the same line of thinking here. It's because how could you really turn down if it's all what it is? It's about what Zhang Weili wants, essentially, because of uh, how important of a champion she's been, and how dominant of a champion that she's been. You know, now in another even in this title reign now, like it's like she never lost the title to begin with. So, um, this is if that fight did get booked, then that would present a few problems for Zhang Weili on the ground. But the question is, how often would Jandiroba be able to get it on the ground? To be honest, as Zhang Weili still presents very good takedown defense, and I think as long as she does that, um, that there's probably I think about it like kind of when I watch Israel Adesanya, like yeah, you might be able to take advantage of him in the grappling game, but are you gonna get him there is the question. Even like Alex, and then obviously, um, well if they're gonna piece you up on the feet to begin with, then you're not gonna have much to give anyways. So I think
You also
that's the
can't
same.
forget the Tatiana Suarez fight. I mean, everybody thought that Tatiana Suarez
Yeah.
had the potential to do
Wow.
that, and she couldn't. So
Exactly.
Virna's similar in the sense that I think she has a lot of strength and really good technique, but Jandiroba's jiu-jitsu, I think, is better than Tatiana's. But that's the thing. You got to get it to the ground in order to use that jiu-jitsu and use that strength that I just mentioned with Jandiroba. And the thing is, Zhang Weili is such an incredible athlete, even besides the fact that she's great technically in every facet of MMA. But I just think it makes sense right now. I think Virna's earned a title shot, and considering that I think a super fight between Valentina versus Zhang isn't going to be anytime soon, regardless. I think that might be the time to make it because even if you still want to see that super fight, if Valentina and Zhang both get through the clear number one contenders in their division, that only adds hype to a big fight like that. So that's how I view it. I think Jandiroba's earned it. I might be biased too because I am a fan of hers. She's been really good for a really long time. She's just been in that type of position where she always gets to that fight right before
Well,
the title fight and loses. So this time she won, and I say give it to her.
I mean, she's one of those people that when she does get your back, which she can get very easily. I mean, the round, if not the fight, it's over right then and there. And I mean, she honestly put Xiaonan through hell in this fight.
I
She had
genuinely cannot believe that got to the scorecards.
yeah, me
Like
neither.
with all those submission
She had her
attempts.
in a half Nelson, I believe, in the first round, and she was, and you could tell the torque on Yanchan on her, like her shoulder, her arm, and then obviously you have Jandiroba laying down the shots too. I think she got saved by the bell there, to be honest. Otherwise, the fight possibly could have been finished because man, Yanchan was taking a beating right there.
Yeah, she was. I mean, just great win. Like I said, that's the type of win you want for somebody who's now the number one contender. I mean, yeah, she could have gotten a finish, but outside of a finish, this is pretty much as well as it could have gone for Virna Jandiroba. So
So, well, I'm trying to think which Zhang Weili, if she even has really seen like a true jiu-jitsu grappler like Virna Jandiroba, rather than like a wrestler like Tatiana Suarez or Carlos Esparza. You know what I
it's
mean?
tough. I mean, you could say that Andrade, she has good jiu-jitsu. Rose Namajunas obviously has really good jiu-jitsu too, but nobody, I don't think anybody with quite
I
that
think
type of
people
jiu-jitsu like
stand
Virna.
across from Zhang Weili and they realize I have to. I might not be able to finish her perhaps, but I have to be able to hold my own on the feet one way or the other.
Unless you're Rose and you just kick her right in the fucking head, which is crazy. I like in hindsight, that was like a crazy moment because considering how dominant Zhang has been in her next reign as champion, I can't believe that actually happened. So,
Yeah,
but
that's what I mean. It any that's what I mean. If you can hold your own, at least she
or
might
surprise her with something.
just surprise her exactly. Because then that'll set you up for being able to surprise her. The more you draw the fight out. Because
Yeah.
Zhang Wei Li, you know, she can draw the fight out and she can finish you.
Yeah. And I've said this too with her. Like after the Tatiana Suarez fight, I'm like, I don't know who at strawweight can beat her. And right now it just seems like
she's just a complete package.
Yeah.
After that Tatiana Suarez showing, like, there's nothing you can.
There's no weakness. Like I don't know where you beat her right now, and that's why I think maybe a jiu-jitsu fighter. Who knows? Like maybe that's the way. But like you said, you got to get her on the ground. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I guess we'll see. Speaking of jiu-jitsu, though, talking about this fight, shout out to all the gooners out there, dude, because Chase Hooper just got one for all you guys. If you're a fan of fun grappling exchanges, I mean, this was the fight for you because Chase Hooper and Jim Miller, that was a really fun fight. 30-27, 229-28. Chase Hooper gets it done via unanimous decision. And, you know, personally, I've told you this before. I got into MMA because I was a boxing fan. We're gonna get to it, Tiz. Don't worry. Come on, keep it together. We were professionals. Come on, we're professionals. All right, let's get to it. Let's just address the elephant in the room. Yeah. I don't think you thought I was gonna start with that, did you?
That was not. We did not talk about that before we started the show. You had it in the outline, but I knew we were gonna, at the end after we talked about great win for Chase Hooper, but yeah, dude, because when he said that, I had to do a double take. I'm like, wait, did he just say what I think he just said? I'm like, exactly, oh my god, like, whoa, you would think you would think he wouldn't want to grapple as much. But
with the tired arms and all, or arm.
Exactly. Having a pass and stuff as much as he did. Bro almost went for a twister at a point there. That whole pretzel
he was been twisting some other stuff during training camp too, apparently. I mean, dude, he was getting some workouts in.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That you know. Well, oh my god. Dude, this plays because I'm pretty sure it was this fight, some sort of crotch grip that he went for in Jim Miller.
Oh yeah, because he had him in that weird position, and like Jim Miller's like legs were like spread so badly. I was like,
training camp for Chase Hooper.
That's that gooner special on the ground. You know how yeah, oh my god, I'm about to go on a tangent here, but we might as well. I think we're off the rails already. Yeah. So let's talk about it. But you know how like BJJ Fanatics has like those certain like instructional DVDs or whatever? It'll be like I don't know, like cage wrestling for MMA fighters, or like submissions from full guard for like, it'll be like certain things. And Chase Hooper needs to put out a BJJ Fanatics DVD. It's like Jiu-Jitsu for Gooners or something like that. Like the gooning fundamentals for Jiu-Jitsu. Mm-hmm. Something along those lines. I think BJJ Fanatics would make a lot of money off that. So hey, if you guys do that at BJJ Fanatics, or if Chase Hooper sees this, give us a cut, man. Come on, please.
He teaches Jiu-Jitsu already as it is. So now I'm curious if after this fight, you know. There's gonna be stuff. There's gonna be stuff he's gonna recommend everyone to do at home before they go into their competition. Mr. Chase Hooper.
We need to get Chase Hooper in a Vaseline commercial. That'd be a pretty fun one. I'm not even gonna go.
Chase Hooper, man.
The official cream for masturbation for the UFC. The official cream of the UFC.
Oh my god, man, that was so funny, bro.
Yeah, I don't even know how we talk about the fight after that. To be honest with you,
I think we did. I think we already did a decent job of talking about the fight, considering we brought up the twister attempt, the whole pretzel situation, and just the fact that how many times he had to pass and pick Jim Miller. You know, put Jim Miller down. Jim Miller gets up. Put Jim Miller down again, yada yada.
And Jim Miller was doing pretty good on the feet, needs to be said. He just couldn't really keep it there for that much longer. Yeah. And it just seemed like Chase on the ground was a step ahead everywhere. And, you know, I said this to you in the beginning before we started recording, like as a joke. But, like, I want to see these guys have a rematch, but on, like, the UFC Fight Pass Invitational, like, on the mats. I want to see these guys have a jiu-jitsu match after that fight. Like, forget mixed martial arts. Let's see a jiu-jitsu match between these guys. Let's see if that Gooner instructional works out
Yeah.
for Chase Hooper.
Jim Miller wasn't the only thing Chase Hooper was putting up and down.
All right. Yep. Well, yeah. I can't, let's leave that one there.
That's it. That's all that is for that fight.
Great win for Chase Hooper. 5-fight win streak at 155. Clearly that Gooner style is going to be working out for him, and we'll see what happens with him in the future. But yeah, the only other fight that I wanted to talk about really before the end of this was Julian Erosa versus Darren Elkins, mostly because I don't know, when I was watching this fight, it was almost like a bit sad because it just seemed like Darren Elkins never had a chance. And, I get it. His whole career, he's been known for taking a lot of damage in the early part of fights and coming back to win later on. But this fight, it just seemed like he had no chance from the start. He was not a threat to Erosa really anywhere, especially on the feet. And, Erosa's been around for a while. He's a good fighter, but he's not a guy who's ranked at 145, and he's been perpetually kind of just in that top 20, top 30. He's a good test for an up and comer, but that's really that's where he's been in the UFC. So for the fact that Darren Elkins got destroyed and TKO'd in the first round like that by Erosa, I don't know, man. I think that Elkins might need to look into his future a little bit and see whether it's worth it to keep going, because he's taken so much damage over the years, and in this fight alone he took so much damage. And I mean, even the stoppage in this one was brutal. It was way late. It was, I don't know, just a tough one, but good win for Julian Erosa. But that's all I really wanted to say there, so we can move on unless you have anything that you wanted to add to it. But it seems like
no. I mean, the fight had fight of the night potential written all over it, but
just didn't get there. So but either way, really great card. Obviously, Amanda Nunes makes the Hall of Fame, too. That was really cool. Obviously, she deserves it. She might be coming back, apparently, because she said she's interested in fighting the winner of Pena versus Harrison. I would be very much down for that. But even bigger story from this past week, and Dana White got asked about it after this event, but the UFC's future at ESPN is kind of hanging in the balance here. Their contract with them ends this year, so the negotiating window, the exclusive negotiating window with ESPN, I know, dude, I agree, trust me, ESPN Plus stinks. I think we could all agree on that. As do all Disney apps. I want to say that. This is a personal vendetta I need to get off my chest before we get into this story.
Go ahead.
ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus are the three worst apps in streaming. And I don't mean in terms of their catalog. They have great content on them, but the apps all crash constantly. They all have problems. I mean, was it UFC 313 or 312 where the first hour of the pay-per-view on ESPN Plus was glitching, and then on Stream East it was completely fine? So why would you want to buy a pay-per-view when you can stream it and the quality on the streaming is better than it is on the actual app you're supposed to use? So, but all right. Because of that, I've always hated these Disney apps, and I've literally canceled them because they're so bad. And ESPN Plus is probably the worst service out of all three, to be honest with you. But
goddamn Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, screw Disney, man. But either way, just want to say this. The UFC's exclusive negotiating window with ESPN ends on Tuesday. Dana has said that he's open to going back to ESPN or still working with them in some capacity. And I think that's possible. He kind of compared it to other sports where he's like, well, you have other sports that air on multiple networks. It seems like he might be trying to go for something like that. My prediction is that maybe they stick with ESPN, but they also add Netflix, because it seems like the rumors are swirling that Netflix is in the future for the UFC. And I think there's a lot of credence to that, just because, the UFC is partnered with the WWE, with TKO Group. WWE has gone to Netflix with Raw, and that's been pretty successful. I think that the UFC would make sense for them to follow their business partner to Netflix, because I think that that's been pretty lucrative for the WWE. And I think putting the UFC on a platform like Netflix, even if they do keep working with ESPN, I think that would really branch it out to even more people. because it kind of did that in the beginning with ESPN, because we were still kind of at the tail end of like cable being dominant. But now in this world where like streaming services are really number one right now, I think if they could stay on ESPN and also get on Netflix, that would be incredible business for the UFC. But if I had to choose, I think if any of us had to choose, I think we'd all want to see the UFC on Netflix over ESPN at this point. And that could also end the pay-per-view structure, because then, Netflix has their subscription service already. They could either lower the pay-per-view or they could just get rid of them already. Or altogether. Sorry, not already. That's my take on it. I know you agree. That's why it's like you can say what you want to say too, but I think that, right, like I think we all agree that ESPN Plus has kind of not done a great job when it comes to the UFC, and we've talked about this too with the ESPN machine. It seems like the UFC hasn't been as focused on building stars either, and I honestly just don't think ESPN does that good of a job at doing it. I think they do like just enough, like they do with every sport. And I think we're starting to see the turn in momentum when it comes to sports right now, and I think the UFC really might rely on something like Netflix. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Just wanted to bring it up. It seems like it's an important story because obviously, we're going to be seeing pretty soon where we're going to be watching the UFC in the future. So big news, and big week for the UFC. It's been really fun. And obviously next week there is no card. It is Easter weekend. So it seems like the UFC is giving everybody off. And we're going to be off for that too. Obviously, we have plenty of content that you guys could watch from us in the meantime. We have plenty of vlogs, interviews. Obviously, we did the live pod a few weeks ago that you guys should check out if you haven't already. We'll be back for UFC Kansas City 2 weeks from now. Amazing main event in that fight. Ian Gary versus Carlos Prates. And that's going to be a banger. We're super excited for that. And we'll see you all then.
Good night.
Feel just like a superstar. Doing all these drugs, I don't think I'm gonna see tomorrow. Living fast, brand new dash up in a foreign car. It's the type of shit that you be doing when you going hard.